I thought I would do a video to show you what we did for our wedding. We tried to do everything as cheaply as possible and with a kind of Victorian Gothic Halloween theme. So hopefully if you are planning your wedding, maybe this will give you some ideas that you can use. I hope you find it entertaining. I hope it's not too boring. We had to cut a lot out because we didn't want to put the faces of our guests in the video, but take a look and I hope you like it. For our save the date RSVP and our invitations, we made them ourselves to try to cut back on expense. We also tried to keep them rather lighthearted. Our save the date here, we have "We're having an open bar," and the wedding too. For that, I just printed it out on cardstock and burnt the edges a little to give it a little unique flair. For the RSVP, we again went on the humorous side with options of "We'll be there with bells on," "We'll be there free of bells," "We'll be there undecided on bells," "Will not be there, heard there will be people wearing bells," "Will not be there regardless of bell controversy," and "Other." Unfortunately, this really confused a lot of people and they weren't sure what to pick. I thought it was humorous, but you know, to each their own. The invite itself has pictures of us on the front with dueling pistols. It says, "We challenge you to a wedding on the field of matrimony." Very corny, I know. These, I actually had to go to Staples to get these printed. I was going to print them on our home printer, but they were a little too dark, a little too blurry because of the photo quality. But I think they turned out good, and it didn't cost too much money to do. On the inside of the invitation, we have all of our pertinent information with a picture of us on either side. There was a gazebo at the park we got married at. We took some pictures there. We did our dueling with our reproduction black powder guns, and we really had a lot of fun. I had my future mother-in-law there taking pictures for us, and it was a fun day, although I think we just used it as an excuse to mess around with some dueling pistols. Joseph is a cheater. Yes, he is. It was a hot day, but we had a lot of fun doing it, and I think that's important. You get wrapped up in trying to get everything done for your wedding and you get stressed out. So this was a fun day that we could blow a little steam off under the guise of getting things done for the wedding. Honestly, I liked the blooper pictures better than the actual pictures for the invitations. I don't know, there's just something about them. So my wedding dress, I had a gold wedding dress with black trim. I made it myself. I went wedding dress shopping and I could not find anything that I really liked. Nothing really flattered me. I'm not a huge fan of white, so I went with the gold because, you know, a lot of family members get upset if you don't wear white to a wedding, but I think gold is purer than white, right? It doesn't get dirty easy and it stands the test of time. So, you know, that was my reasoning. But I was actually in the hotel room the morning of the wedding, still setting grommets in the back for it to be laced up. So I am a huge procrastinator. But it turned out okay. I was actually missing a longer petticoat underneath. I didn't have time to order it, and I just never got it done. I did have a lobster tail bustle cage in the back. So I think that's my one regret, is not having a full petticoat, because you could see the ribbing of the cage in the back, and I don't know. I don't like the way the lines were, but the fabric was nice and flowy, so I think it masked it for most of the pictures. There's a couple that I'm not very happy with, but, you know, que sera, sera. The dress probably cost me maybe $200 to make, so I think that was a pretty good deal. So, coming up on the wedding, I started to have this theme going on, which is the dog-faced gargoyles. So, I actually have something similar to those on the buttons on the dress. So, here's the story behind that. We had our wedding rings custom made because, again, I couldn't find anything that I really liked. I was getting very upset about it. So I was on Etsy and I saw someone making rings out of old silver spoons, and there was one with a dog-faced gargoyle that I just fell in love with. And as I read the description, it must have been like fate. I can't say anything else than it must have been fate, because this particular design for the spoon was made for a wealthy banker whose last name was the same name as the street I had been living on. So I was like, that's it. It was meant to be. And I've always loved the dog-faced gargoyles, especially all the wood-carved furniture and everything. So I was like, that's it. This is my new symbol. This is my life. That's what we're going with. So my actual wedding band has the dog-faced gargoyles, and the engagement ring has a flower motif also off of that spoon design, so it kind of brings it all together. Also, with that, I went on to Etsy and I found this gorgeous necklace. Also has a dog face type gargoyle on it, and the red just really popped against the gold dress, and I absolutely loved it. Had to get it. It also came with a set of earrings, although I ended up using a different set of earrings than what came with it, but they're very similar to it. And because my dress was so long and no one was really going to see my shoes, we got married outside, so the ground was a bit uneven. I went with a nice comfy pair of knee-high boots. They had a little bit of heel on them, so they were still a little elegant, but comfy factor was a 10. So my feet were not killing me by the end of the night, and I'm very happy I made that decision. I'm sure a lot of people looked at me funny if they noticed, but you know what? My wedding, my way. Like I said, I'm a huge procrastinator, so one of the last things I did was get the garter, which I literally walked into the Halloween store. I went for the 1920s section for the Flapper Girl stuff to see if they had anything, but on the way, I spotted this in the pirate section, a little garter with a little pirate dagger with a little skull head for the pommel, and I said, that's it, we're going with that. That is going to be hilarious. So we did get that. Excuse the chubby leg. I'm so very sorry. One thing I didn't like, I know this is off subject, but the photographer took some pictures in black and white and some in color. Why not just take them all in color and then you can turn them black and white if you want that aesthetic? Because I'm very upset I have some pictures that I really like, but they're stuck in black and white. So, yeah, that's my little rant for that. Now, for my bouquet, I just went with a dark red mum and just kind of taped it together there. You really couldn't see the taped part when I was walking down the aisle. But for the handle for my bouquet, I used a French, what do they call it? A gorget? It's actually a like a holder for when you're like cutting a leg of lamb. You screw that onto the bone part of the lamb to hold it in place while you cut it. And I'm a big fan of silver plate, so I really wanted it. So I splurged a little and got that, and I thought it turned out beautifully. So as we were getting dressed for the wedding, we look out the window, and there's just a little cat just hunkered down, blessing us with its presence. And that really added so much more to the wedding day. Not that I was questioning it. We were going out for about 10 years when we got married. We got engaged about 5 years into it, and then it took us another 5 years to save up for the wedding. Even though we wanted to try to do it as cheaply as possible, we wanted to make sure we could afford everything. So we got married at Ridley Creek State Park in Pennsylvania. We got married October 26th, 2013. 2013, 13 being a lucky number. 26 is also a lucky number for me. So it was just, again, kind of fate that the 26th fell on a Saturday in the year 2013. So we had our reception in the ballroom, which, again, trying to cut down on expense. All the walls are wood paneled, which was beautiful, meaning I didn't have to spend much on decoration, which was good for the purse. And instead of paying a church and a church organist, we got married out back in their garden, which had a beautiful fountain and a very altar-like stone feature. So for the beginning of the wedding, the pastor was up on top of the altar thing there. You can see the steps on the side. So this kept him out of the very beginning pictures. So we had some pictures of just us together, which was nice. I look at a lot of wedding pictures and the pastor is standing there off center. He's making a funny face. So it was nice to have some pictures of just us together. On a side note, we totally did not discuss anything with the pastor about this, but he actually took it upon himself to start the wedding with, "Marriage is what brings us together today," which is a Princess Bride reference, which we were not expecting, and it definitely lightened the mood and really put us and our guests into hysterics because it was perfect for us. On either side of the fountain, we lined the pathway with wooden folding chairs. I have to tell this story because every time I recount the wedding, I have to bring this up. We had a lot of problems with our caterer, and he is the person we rented the chairs through as well. Now, when we originally put the contract together, I ordered a very dark wood chair. Instead, you see in the picture here, we got a lighter wood. These were called fruit wood, which, looking at them, now they look fine. They look very natural. They fit in with the autumn colors. But when I first walked down the aisle and I saw those chairs and saw that they were a lighter wood, I was so very upset. I did not need that on the way to the altar. But now looking at them, they're fine. But I looked the caterer dead in the eye and I said, "I'm a goth. Do you think fruit wood would have come from my lips? Fruit wood? I ordered a darker wood." And he gave me the wrong chairs. But he kept changing the contract and details without even notifying us. So I'm not going to go any further with that. Everything worked out in the end. So if you are getting married, I just want to say don't let the problems of the day worry you. Most of it will be just a funny anecdote later on. Hang in there. It's okay. It will be okay. So I'll only show you some pictures that do not have my wedding party since I don't want to put their faces out there on the internet. But the autumn leaves were a beautiful backdrop. Just look at this handsome man. He had a Regency style jacket, pince nez, which are the glasses that have no arms. They just kind of pinch onto the bridge of your nose, and a waxed mustache. I know he looks happy there. Just look how handsome. But we got some really nice pictures. Unfortunately, it was a lot colder that day than we had anticipated, so we didn't get a whole lot of pictures done because we didn't want to keep our guests waiting. I do also regret that. I paid for pictures. I wish I had taken the time to actually get more done. Unfortunately, it was also very windy that day, so we couldn't do our Unity candle outside. But we did do it inside, and for that we had a jack-o'-lantern with a green pillar candle. Later on, the photographer recycled him to take pictures of our wedding bands, which was a brilliant idea. look how spooky and happy he looks. Um, Unfortunately, I'm not really particularly crazy about the black marker, but we were afraid his face might fade into the background, so we outlined it. Again, our rings were custom made. Joseph's has a rapier sword going around the band, and then he has a lion and a falcon flanking a sort of a Celtic-y type cross. My rings, I have the two coffins on either side of the diamond, with the diamond baguettes as windows. And we have Gothic stained glass windows surrounding the diamond. Sorry, that picture's a little blurry there. Underneath of that, I also have a cross carved into the ring that you can only see when I take it off. So a lot of nice touches. Again, the dog face gargoyle on the wedding band and the letter S for my last name. So on our reception table, we had our unity candle and the tapers we used to light it, a leather-bound guest book with a lion on the front. We had a card box that we recycled from a friend's wedding, which was actually my husband's best man. So that was a nice little nod to their wedding. It was their centerpiece we got to take home. For our favors, we did Bath and Body Works hand sanitizers. Since my husband is a germaphobe, it's both something useful, something people won't have to keep for the rest of their life, and something that represented us. So we got those on sale with a bunch of different fall colors and scents. So I loved that. The glass container I got from Kohl's on clearance, which was pumpkin shaped and had a little metal leaf dangling off the handle. I can still use that, and I use it to hand out my Halloween treats. We did have some children at the wedding, so I put together a little activity bundle for them in a cauldron. Different little Halloween themed things to keep them entertained. I know I used to be bored to death at weddings, so I hope they appreciated it. Again, I went on Etsy and I bought these two spoons that say "Till death do us part." Again, I'm obsessed with silver plate. We used these for our cake tasting for the first slice of cake, so I thought that was a cute little addition as well. So for our cake, we had a 4-layer topsy-turvy pumpkin. The pumpkins are actually pumpkin. I kind of forget what the other two flavors were. I think one was a sort of vanilla orange or orange blossom. I forget what the third flavor was, but the pumpkins were actually pumpkin, which I thought was adorable. Now, again, things don't always go as planned. When I was discussing the cake with the bakery, I said, I do not want a cartoony pumpkin. I want a realistic pumpkin. And they gave us fluorescent orange. Since the top of our cake was a pumpkin with a stem, we couldn't put toppers on top of the cake, which gave us a little more room to go bigger. We are both fans of the Japanese animation Gundam. So I was the Akai and my husband was the Zaku. I was to be pulling him behind me. Unfortunately for the picture, other people had touched them, so it wasn't quite positioned right, but I think you kind of get the idea. So this is another interest of ours that we kind of just had a little nod to, pulled it in there in the end. And I think it turned out really cute, and plus it gave us an excuse to buy some master grade models, which are usually on the expensive side. I got to do my own sort of more steampunk color scheme on the Akai. Again, the room itself was beautiful. All the walls were dark wood paneling, the ceiling was beautiful. All I really had to decorate were the tables. So we went with a nice yellow linen and the centerpieces. The chairs were already gold. That's also another story with the caterer. The chairs had white pads on them. That originally came with the wedding package for the location. However, they were a little stained up and I'm against white. So I asked the caterer if I could rent maybe like a burgundy seat cushion. And he agreed to it. It was in the contract. And the day of the wedding, he just omitted that from the contract because his supplier would not rent them to him without the actual chairs attached. So another thing that I often complain about. In the end, it turned out fine. I don't know if anyone's rears were sore after sitting in the chairs without pads, but they look good for the pictures. And I guess that's okay in the end. Side note, like I said, I sewed my own wedding dress. Joseph flung me around a little too enthusiastically during the first dance, and the back of the arm actually ripped at the shoulder. But I guess I'm glad he's enthusiastic. Our sweetheart table was in front of a fireplace, as you can see there. Beautiful stone fireplace. Our reception table was to the left, our cake was to the right, so it made a very scenic, picturesque background. So here's a bit of a better picture of the fireplace. It has quatrefoils in the corners. It's lovely. I wish I had it in my own home. We used the same golden linens as the rest of the tables. 2 resin skulls that I got a couple Halloweens ago from Walgreens. Very realistic looking skulls, at least in my opinion. We have the fake column candles, which have a burnt wick and they flicker, so they looked very real, but I didn't have to worry about catching the place on fire. We have the green moss. I love natural elements, and I've always been obsessed with moss, so I included that. And a bowl of candy in the background. I mean, what's a Halloween wedding without candy? You gotta have it for the trick-or-treaters. It really looked good in the dark as well, that beautiful orange glow. Look at that happy man. So handsome, so handsome. For our wedding party table, we followed through with the same theme: green moss, pillar candles, some silver plate bowls of trick-or-treat candy, and of course I have to have some pumpkins in there. And for our guest tables, we made a frame out of wood trim that matched the ribbing on the centerpiece. We filled that with moss. The centerpiece is made from plastic terracotta planters that we spray painted black. I got those from a discount dollar store. I think they were about $2.50 each. So we spray painted those. The girl was looking at me like, you want to use these ugly plastic terracotta things for your wedding? But they actually turned out really well with the hammered spray paint. So we filled those in with more moss, and attached to that we have these iron tree centerpieces that are actually candelabras. They have little clear crystal balls that reflect the light, and I painted a couple of those little pumpkins you get from Joann's, and I stuck them in there just for a little fun accent. For the number holders, we got these little skeleton heads from Kohl's. They're a little more biker skull than I would have liked, but they did in a pinch. For the napkins, we tied them together with some Dracula fangs. That really made some fun pictures. The guests took it upon themselves to take some pictures with the fangs in. So I actually have, at the end of my wedding album, a little blooper reel with people with the fangs in, so it ended up really cute. They're not as elaborately set up as I had planned, but time did not permit. Everything was done last minute. So overall, I think everything on the table really tied in well together. We did splurge a little on the fancy plates because plain white plates were not in my aesthetic. Unfortunately, in the middle of the plates are still white, but hey, with the fangs, I think it ties in together well. Our photographer offered us a package for a photo booth, which was a black backdrop, and they stood there with the camera and took the pictures for us. That way we could zoom in and out. We could make sure everyone gets in the frame. I really like that setup versus the standalone automatic photo booth. We provided a giant cauldron full of Halloween props and costume pieces, and the results were hilarious. Unfortunately, I can't share most of the pictures. Again, I don't want to put my guests' faces out there, but this is me with my two cousins who were my bridesmaids. And of course, what is Halloween without the treats? To tie up the night, we had an ice cream bar with more candy than you know what to do with. Earlier in the night, we also handed out some Halloween fortune cookies with spooky fortunes. That gave us an excuse to go around to each table and greet people and talk to them and thank them for coming. So I thought that was a nice little touch. I hope everyone enjoyed the wedding, and I hope you enjoy looking at everything that we had done with it. The wedding was plagued with a bunch of problems, but if you were not behind the scenes, you never would have known. In the end, it turned out really well, even though I still complain about chairs and about this and that. It really did turn out well, and I'm so blessed to have had a wonderful wedding.